All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys know the drill. We're going to make a nice, quick, like, hour and a half long video here, more than likely. Hopefully, this video won't be too terribly long. I want to make this one a little bit quicker. So I basically decided to just start putting out the PvP guides as quickly as I possibly can, as soon as there's like new information or, yada, 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 patches and so forth and so on. I gave the Paladin community plenty of time to try to fill the void by not making guides, and of course, it was just awful what came out the other end. So I was like, all right, whatever. I'll just start making the guides again. The king has returned. Okay, so let's go to gear here real fast. So this is going to be the phase 3 stuff. Hi, puppy. How you doing? It's okay. I'm making a video here. So this is going to be the phase 3 stuff. The phase 3 gear is kind of interesting because it actually gave us PvP sets in the grand scheme of things. Let me just check it out here real fast. It's not super well optimized for PvP. This is more like retail gearing. Some of the gear is not bad, but some of the gear is pretty bad. So for example, a lot of the gear has its stamina and intellect split evenly between the two of them, or pretty much as evenly as anything gets in classic World of Warcraft, right? So it's like, eight intellect. This is a good example. 12 intellect, 12 stamina. This is exactly what you want in retail World of Warcraft for many years, like Wrath of the Lich King, for example. This is really good itemization. Well, the reason why this is really good itemization is because intellect is much more valuable in retail. Each point of intellect is worth, like, a point of spell power. Traditionally speaking, I don't even know if it's that way still. I haven't played retail in like a decade. But this is classic World of Warcraft, and intellect is not worth a spell power point, which means that your PvP gear wants to be significantly more stamina heavy. So if this piece of gear said something closer to only 8 intellect, so that would be minus 4 intellect, but it had 15 stamina on it, that would be more ideal. All the other stats here are perfectly fine. But PvP gear in Classic World of Warcraft is always had a stat prioritization a bit heavy on the stamina at the expense of other stats. Avengers gear is that way. Tier 1 is that way. Tier 2 is that way. The rank gear is that way. It just is what it is, right? You need more stamina in Classic World of Warcraft because it's just much more bursty. So the gear here, it's nice that it has the stats that we want, but it doesn't have them quite in the quantities that we want. So this helm is a little bit better. You can see she's a little bit stamina heavy on the stam int side, but everything else here is like split evenly. And then sometimes it creates like a cardinal sin, and it's like, uh, it'll be like, where's a good example? I'm trying to find one. Right here. Nope. Okay, at least it's prioritizing stamina over intellect. That's good. So I can't complain about that. So, because if it said something like, 10 stamina and a level 11 intellect, that would just be awful. Okay, so Paladin gearing is very interesting in Phase 3 because you have to examine it by spec, of course. More importantly, you can do a mix of gearing. So you either want to wear stamina, intellect, plus healing gear, possibly stamina, intellect, spell power gear, but not likely. Or you can do this other gear here, which is like just super stamina heavy strength gear. So like no spell power, no intellect on it, pretty much whatsoever. Or you can do a mix of the two because you can actually wear the two piece. You can wear 3 sets of this stuff and get like the 3 set bonus of the PvP gear twice. That might end up being BIS. I'll have to look into it. But for right now, I just geared up one Paladin as like a theoretical Deep Ret Paladin. No intellect gear, no spell power gear, just super heavy stamina gear. We talked about it before in previous videos. If you haven't heard, I'll say it again. Classic World of Warcraft Paladin is very strange in the sense that if you're butt naked with a two-handed weapon, congratulations, you're doing 80% of your damage. Basically, all 10 pieces of gear that we have here, or 12, or whatever the heck it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, all 14 pieces of gear here outside of your two-handed weapon. Each piece here is only increasing your DPS by not even 2%. All the gear there is increasing your DPS by somewhere between 20 to 25%. Particularly in a PvP environment where you just have to wear more stamina or you're just not viable. In Season of Discovery, of course, they're giving us DPS out the wazoo in the runes, and they just keep refusing to give us anything but more DPS in the runes. So basically what this means is that all Paladin builds are essentially DPS capped, butt naked with a two-handed weapon in Season of Discovery. What this basically means is that for just about every Paladin, durability is king in your gearing. Whatever the heck is going to make you more durable in your gearing is the proper way to gear for PvP. If you're like, oh, this has crit on it, this has more attack power, blah 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 blah. No, you actually want durability above all. So, for example, we have a Deep Ret Paladin here, and she's pretty much prioritized stamina as much as possible. Most of the heavy stamina gear comes with strength and agility on it, anyways. So it's DPS gear, whether you like it or not. But at least it's stamina heavy, a DPS gear. What else is there to say? The only other thing that's really going to increase... Right. So if you wanted a stat prioritization for a Deep Retribution Paladin or a Ret Reckoning Paladin in Season of Discovery, it's literally stamina is number 1, then stamina is number 2, and then stamina is number 3, and down there at number 4 might be plus healing, and only past that would it be a DPS. This changes a little bit based upon what kind of Paladin you're playing. So, for example, Deep Ret Paladin doesn't mind having extra DPS, and Ret Reckoning Paladin definitely doesn't mind having extra DPS, because a Ret Reckoning Paladin needs to be able to press W towards their target, because they have no healing in combat. They don't have Repent or anything like that to help them heal in combat. So a Deep Ret Paladin has to press W towards the enemy and has to get the job done with a Wreck Bomb with 2 to 3 charges worth of a Wreck Bomb. Or to put a half a Wreck Bomb into the target and then to cut them to pieces with a raw DPS shortly after. So Ret Reckoning both needs enough durability that they can survive pressing W towards the enemy, just YOLOing at them. But at the same time, they like extra damage because it's very rare for them to have a full Wreck Bomb. Deep Ret Paladin doesn't mind having extra DPS, especially at level 50, because their runes are all over the place. They have a massive rune issue right now, and I'll talk about that when I get there. I'm just covering the gearing in general here. So if this is not your best gear as a Deep Ret Paladin, it would be a mix of the gear. So you'd strip out 3 pieces of this PvP gear and replace them with specifically plus healing gear, or the spell power gear, depending upon what kind of build you are. We'll get to the runes when we get to the runes. But you can see the HP difference. This one is almost 4,000. This thing has 4,150 HP. This is a human, so they're missing 30 HP compared to a dwarf. This one is a dwarf, so she has 3,400 HP. So you can see it's missing 750 HP, which is a massive amount of HP to be missing. But this thing down here has almost 300 plus healing on it, which is absolutely insane, especially when you start factoring in things like Major Recombobulator Ray and the type of PvP trinket that you're going to be using, which will increase your spell plus healing by another 200 for 20 seconds. Why is that terrifying? Because Major Recombobulator Ray is probably one of your best defensive trinkets in the entire game. On average, she'll give you 500 health and 500 mana. I could be wrong about that, actually. Let me try to see what she'll actually give you really fast here. It was at 375 and 265. 375 plus 625 equals divided. Yeah, it's exactly 500. Okay, I've done that math before. But more importantly, all the Recombobulator Ray trinkets have a 100% spell power ratio behind their heal. So this thing is going to heal for 800 HP because I have 300 plus healing on the gear, which is absolutely insane. And then, of course, if you activate a trinket like this one down here, it's not going to be an 800 heal. It's going to be a 1,000 HP heal. So this thing secretly has a hell of a lot more HP than you think that she would have. This build is more of a Reckoning build, specifically a Holy Reckoning build, because of her runes. So Holy Reckoning is going to take Sheath of Light. Any Paladin build that's taking Sheath of Light synergizes spectacular. Their stat prioritization basically becomes stamina and plus healing, because Sacred Shield has a 43% spell power ratio behind her. On top of that, it makes the bubble. Oh God, it went up that much. It makes the bubble even more powerful. You can damage, gain a shield, absorbing 240. That might be factoring in the gear. Let me try downranking and see if it does anything. Actually, let me see. I'm trying to wonder why it's so high. That because it might actually be factoring in the 43% spell power ratio. That's interesting. What happened? What's going on here? Sergeant Major's plate. What? Oh, did I switch classes? Okay, thank God. Human? Thank you. Talents. Sacred Shield, what are you doing? No, it still says 242. That's interesting. So it must be really high. I was thinking at this current level, she'd only be like 150, but I guess Blizzard buffed her. So I'll have to take that into consideration. So she's even more better than I thought she is. But she has a 43% spell power ratio behind her, and she starts synergizing spectacularly well with any kind of plus healing gear whatsoever. Because the way Sacred Shield works is you only get the 50% increased critical strike chance on flashes of light if the shield is active on you and hasn't been popped yet. So if the shield is popped, you don't get the 50% additional heal bonus. In addition, causes your flashes of light to heal you. Yeah. And you also don't get the hot bonus to my knowledge. So once you start stacking spell power and specifically plus healing on this gear, it starts going Super Saiyan in many different ways. I've done the math on it. Basically, 10 spell power or plus healing with Sacred Shield. And nothing else, meaning you don't have, what's the other one? Sheath of Light. Sheath of Light makes it even more powerful because Sheath of Light causes any criticals to put a hot on you. If you don't have Sheath of Light, and we're just talking a Sacred Shield by itself, it's basically, every 10 spell power is basically worth 2.3, somewhere around there, plus healing. This is assuming that every 12 seconds you're going to put at least 2 flashes of light into yourself. Just to guarantee that one of those crits, and when you get the crit, it puts a hot on you, and then you're rolling with it, right? So, an 100 spell power, of course, would be worth times 10 of that, so it's like worth 23 HPS. Super powerful, believe it or not. And the Sacred Shield just by herself is insane. Let's just put this in perspective here real fast. I'll just do the math on it really quickly. Actually, let me pause the video and I'll come back with the math. It's difficult to describe how powerful Sacred Shield is compared to with what unless you've actually it's difficult to describe how powerful she is with any kind of spell power behind her unless you've actually seen it for yourself. So let me pause the video. I'll do the math really fast, and I'll just tell you exactly what this thing is doing for you in this gear at level 50, and the reason why we're wearing it, because I need to justify the fact that I'm only running around with 3,400 HP. This is extremely low HP for a Paladin at level 50 compared to what you could be doing at 4,150. The only thing that would cause us as Reckoning Paladins to actually bump up our HP pools is if we're getting deleted out of existence. But that's not really going to happen once I start talking to you about the tactical stuff involved. The fact that you're jabbing people with Enlightened Judgments and Exorcism, causing spell pushback. The fact that you have Sacred Shield with a bunch of plus healing behind it. The fact that you have Hand of Reckoning with Sacred Shield with a bunch of spell power behind it. The fact that you have Major Recombobulator Ray with various trinkets that make that even more powerful, with Hand of Reckoning and the jab behind it. Everything just starts synergizing and going Super Saiyan here. But let's just have a conversation for a hot second about Sacred Shield. And this is only for Reckoning Paladin. For Deep Ret Paladin, it looks different because with Deep Ret Paladin, let's go to the Deep Ret Paladin build here with the runes. Deep Ret Paladin really wants to take Rebuke. Okay, they really want to take Rebuke because of everything I said in the Deep Ret Paladin PvP guide, right? Without Rebuke, it becomes much harder for them to stop hardcast heals when they're doing their Wombo combo. The problem is, if you take Rebuke, then you have to take Sacred Shield, and Sacred Shield has no spell power to synergize behind it. So at that point, it might be best to do like 50-50 gear on with the spell power, the plus healing thing that we talked about before. So you'll end up having a little bit of plus healing. You might get up to like 100 plus healing, but that's still nothing to really write home about. But more importantly, you have a dead rune slot if you don't take Exorcism Rune. This is really, really bad game design. Like really, 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 really bad game design on Blizzard's part here from a Deep Ret Paladin perspective. Because if you do not take the Exorcism Rune, what rune do we take here then? Do I take Fanaticism for my increased critical strike on my holy spells? I'm not doing a lot of healing as Deep Ret Paladin and SoD because I have no spell power gear, right? Like healing is virtually useless. I might as well go all in with the bubble and try to kill people. I don't have Blessing of Sanctuary. What the hell are you thinking, Blizzard? Right? So I can't even take Improved Blessing of Sanctuary because I don't have it. Light's Grace. Again, we're not doing any healing in in the game. Blizzard did not give us proper Paladin PvP gear. Proper Paladin PvP gear would be Strength, Stamina, Intellect, and spell power on it. Instead, we're missing the Strength, and the plus healing gear has low stamina on it, which is not ideal. So you're just not healing yourself. So Light's Grace is absolutely useless for a Deep Ret Paladin. And then Wrath, it's like, okay, well, I don't have Exorcism, I don't have Holy Shock, and I don't have, I do have Holy Wrath, but whoop-de-frickin' do. Like, what do I take here? You basically have a dead rune slot if you don't take Exorcism. And that basically is forcing us to take Exorcism, and then the moment you take Exorcism, it becomes questionable as to why are we taking Sacred Shield when we could take Art of War, right? Or Guided by the Light isn't the worst thing in the world. But Sacred Shield just by herself is not the worst thing in the world. The problem is that you'd very much rather have Rebuke here, which is really, really painful for Deep Retribution Paladin. And then, of course, you can take Sheath of Light, and then everything else, like Crusader Strike is fine, and can't take Hammer of Righteousness. Improved Hammer of Wrath is kind of meh. Purifying Power, again, is like if I didn't take Exorcism Rune, that then Purifying Power doesn't do anything for me. So if you take Rebuke, you kind of have another dead rune slot, like half of a dead rune slot. Maybe you can make use of the Improved Hammer of Wrath, like, maybe kind of a thing. But it just sucks. Like, it really, really sucks. They're basically pigeonholing you to taking the Exorcism Rune. Go F yourself, basically. But if we do take the Exorcism Rune, suddenly Purifying Power is worth taking rather than Art of War. And then, of course, you take Divine Storm. But it just sucks that you can't take Rebuke as a Deep Ret Paladin. But since both Deep Ret Paladin and the other Paladin build are taking Sacred Shield, I am now going to pause the video and do the math on Sacred Shield for both of them. I will also switch out the gear so that we can examine what exactly the mixed gear would look like. And yeah, I know there's no runes in here, but there really isn't anything for us. The only thing that would be for us here would be we put 5 points in here, we put 5 points in there because why the heck not? And then you just become basically a Deep Ret Paladin. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's 4, and then it's 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. One more here. 1, 2, 3. What am I missing? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1. Yeah, okay. This is basically your Deep Ret Paladin build. You do have the option to heal in combat. You could strip these points out in theory and put them over like here and like pull 2 points out of here and get maximum hit chance. It just is what it is. Like, so maybe you do something like this. I don't super advise that though. There's a lot of situations where actually having spiritual focus is really good, like against rogues, trying to flash of light yourself while a rogue is hitting you. It forces them to kick you, wasting energy, so it's like healing either way. Just is what it is. So I prefer this. There are some elements where spiritual focus is actually useful, but you're forced to take this, which is just kind of suck. All right, let me pause the video here really fast, and I'll get that math done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Okay, so I spent some time optimizing the gear a little bit better. And basically what I discovered is, where are we at here? Gear. Right. So with the Reckoning stuff, basically what I did is, I noticed that the vast majority of stamina bonus that you're actually getting from the non-plus healing gear is centralized in the boots and in the gloves. Literally, there's like there's almost 100. Yeah, it's like 9 more stamina on these boots than there is in the plus healing boots, which is really interesting. You do give up a ton of plus healing. It's kind of the same with the gloves. If we look at the lamellar gloves, it's 8 stamina, 8 intellect versus 15 stamina. So like plus 70 HP there is ridiculous. It's the same story over here with these damn boots. Scroll down here a little bit. The imbue boots, yeah, 8 stamina compared to 17 stamina. You lose the set bonuses, which is the really big problem. And then the last one that I switched out, I think, is the shoulder pads, because those ended up being a bit more close to each other. Yeah, 9 stamina versus 12 stamina. It's the best stamina gain. But of course, it's the reverse with the gear over here, right? You want to lose as little stamina as possible and do 2 3-set pieces, which you can see right here, right? So we got the 3-set bonus for plus 15 stamina. We got the plus another 3-set bonus right here. So specifically, it's boots, gloves, and then shoulders that get swapped out. So for Deep Ret Paladins, these would be plus healing gear that end up getting swapped out. Wait a minute, that's not true. Right. So for the Deep Ret Paladin, you're putting on the healing headpiece. You're putting on the healing shoulders, and then I think you're putting on healing pants, because that causes you to lose very little stamina. You can see that we've gained almost 100 HP by that swap out, which is really interesting. We've also gained about 100 plus healing in those 3 pieces of gear, which is really nice. Conversely, in this gear over here, we've lost 100 plus healing, so we're down only to 208 plus healing, which sucks. But we've gone up a considerable amount of stamina. I think we gained like 350 stamina, which is impressive and might be worth it. Hard to really say. So if we're getting bursted out, this might be the best gear. So rather than running around with 3,400 HP, it might be better to run around with 3,750 HP and a bit more stamina, or a bit less plus healing. But let's look at the Sheath of Lights comparatively here. All right, cool. So with this Paladin over here, the Deep Ret Paladin has Sheath of Light. And because she has Sheath of Light and a bunch of like 500 attack power, she ends up having like 200. She ends up having like 150 spell power, which means she's gonna have 250 plus healing, which interestingly is more plus healing than this Paladin over here, which doesn't actually take Sheath of Light, right? So that's interesting. If we wore this gear as a Deep Ret Paladin, theoretically we would have Sheath of Light. And then the plus healing would be, let's see here, attack power 4-3. That would pump up like 120, 130 more spell power. But what this means is that the Deep Ret Paladins, Sacred Shield is about 350 HP, which is a ton of HP. And the Reckoning Paladin's Sacred Shield is a bit lower than that at 320, but she doesn't take Sacred Shield for reasons we'll talk about here in a bit. So you can see that standing HP of this Deep Ret Paladin is absolutely massive right now for trying to get bursted out of existence. Our mana pool also went up considerably, which means it's even better for us that we can actually do some healing in combat if we need to. All of a sudden, we might be able to support not taking the Exorcism rune because actually healing yourself might not be the worst thing in the world, even though you still want to take Fanaticism, but it is what it is, right? Feel free to experiment with that. So yeah, so with Sheath of Light, our spell power and our Sacred Shield is not the worst thing in the world. That is an absolutely insane amount of HP to have on a Paladin. You're going to have like, it's going to take longer than 6 seconds to burst you out of existence, so you're going to double dip on that. So you're going to have effectively like 5,000 HP, even without you healing, to try to overcome that. Absolutely monstrous. It gets worse because this number right here is actually what your Holy Lights are going to heal you for. I'll keep this here really fast. So we're not even done with all the benefits of Sacred Shield here, is what I'm trying to say. Put that down. Yeah, cool. All right, so your Holy Lights, my bad, your Flashes of Lights around about, 200, 250 spell power with the Sacred Shield and the Fanaticism. They're going to have damn near 100% critical strike chance on your Paladin. They're going to be healing you for over 700. That's when they're critting. When they do crit, they're going to put a hot on you for that, for 700 and 13, but you got to divide that by 12 seconds. And I have to divide this by 6 seconds, so now we're just looking at HPS. So Sacred Shield is giving you, on the Deep Ret Paladin, basic, damn near 60 HPS, which is terrifying. And then if you have the hot rolling from the Flash of Light, that's worth another, it basically doubles the effect of it, which is super, super terrifying. This gets worse because the Deep Ret Paladin actually took Sheath of Light, which means I need another calculator up here. Let's see, what was that? 700, and this isn't even true. This is wrong, my bad. Times 12. Yeah. Okay. I forgot this Paladin has Sheath of Light. So it's actually this number here multiplied by, no, it would be your base healing. Yeah. Damn it. All right, whatever. I'm trying to remember what the base healing is. Is it 450? Is 400? I think it's 600 is the base healing. Is it 500? I can't remember. Times 1.5 equals... Yeah, damn near 700. Yeah, base healing is probably like 470 times 1.5. Yeah, okay. So what's happening is I need to find the base healing, which is 470. Your Flashes of Light are now healing for 470 base, effectively, on this Paladin. And then when they crit on Sacred Shield, and they will crit on Sacred Shield because you have Sheath of Light, I need to multiply this by about 240. And the reason for this is because Sacred Shield's going to put a hot on you for 100% of that critical healing, and then Sheath of Light is going to put a hot on you for 60% of that crit healing. And that basically comes down to whatever the base healing of your Flash of Light was, like 240% over 12 seconds. So I basically multiply that by, this is what the hot is doing for you at this point, and you divide that by 12 to get an HPS, and bada bing, bada boom, Jesus. So, we're going to add 58 to that. So basically what this means is that this build right here, for a Deep Retribution Paladin, has... In order to burst it out of existence, you need to get through damn near 5,000 HP on this Paladin. This is an insane amount of HP to try to dig through on a Paladin at level 50. That's because you're not going to kill them within the first 6 seconds, so they're going to get 2 charges of Sheath of Light, which is exactly what we want out of Sacred Shield. That's going to give you like a plus 700 effective HP. Very, very easily as a Deep Ret Paladin. You're going to be able to heal yourself with a couple of flashes of light, which make it even worse. Those flashes of light are going to heal you for 700 when they crit. They're damn near guaranteed to crit because Fanaticism 18% plus Sacred Shields 15%. That's already giving us a 68% critical strike chance. You can see our base crit is like, 5% in this gear. So you're like at a 75% chance for those flashes of light to crit. So now you're not looking at 5,000. And of course, if you get that hot off, basically that 5,000 HP pool is if you're AFK. If you're not AFK and you've gotten the hots rolling on yourself, it gets even worse because that's 700 additional HP they have to try to dig through from one flash of light critical. And then, of course, you have this stupid hot rolling that's going to heal you for an absolutely monstrous amount of HPS. It's basically the stuff of nightmares. It's like well over 6,000 HP that they have to try to dig through on a Deep Ret Paladin. This is a super, 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 super tanky Paladin, and you actually have mana to play with here. This is extremely well-geared optimization for a Deep Ret Paladin. What's worse is you actually did take Major Recombobulator Ray, and I wouldn't actually take that, believe it or not, for the 70 stamina. I would literally take the other thing as well. Just, but you can do what you want with the PvP trinkets, right? It's not even super optimized with a PvP trinket. So yeah, if you're not AFK, it's not going to be 6,000 HP. It's going to be more like 7,000 HP. Absolutely insanely difficult to try to put this Paladin down. Okay. So this is your optimized gear for a Deep Retribution Paladin specifically. Again, it's the gear you think you would wear, strength, stamina, intellect, but more importantly, it's the helm, it's the shoulders, and it is the leg plates that get swapped out because that'll give you the 4,268 mana. And then, of course, you're wearing as much stamina ring gear as you can possibly get your hands on. I actually would swap this out in the grand scheme of things, so I'm already sitting at just an insane amount of mana. And specifically, we want probably Dark Moon card Torment, or we want the same thing that the other Paladin has, the bonus healing. So again, we lose 100 HP. We don't really care. Now when we activate this trinket from a defensive perspective, we go super, super Saiyan, right? Like that's the whole purpose of it. Okay, so this gear, absolutely terrifying. But she really needs a Sheath of Light to really do this thing. This gear might even be BIS optimization for a Reckoning Paladin, believe it or not, now that I'm looking at it. 100 plus healing is not the worst thing in the world, especially when you factor in that you have this trinket from a defensive perspective. You have a Recombobulator Ray. 4,150 HP is absolutely insane. You still have kind of enough mana to play with as a Reckoning Paladin. It might actually be BIS. But let's talk about why it might not also be BIS for Reckoning Paladin. So the reason why this might not be BIS for Reckoning Paladin, and you might prefer the increase in the plus healing, and you might prefer the increased mana bar, is because you take Hand of Reckoning on a Reckoning Paladin. You don't. For the Deep Ret Paladin, you take Crusader Strike instead, which means you lose a considerable amount of HP. Also, the Deep Ret Retribution Paladin does not have Kings, which is a problem. And of course, this build does have Kings. Let me take a drink of water here. The Deep Ret Paladin at level 50, you have to choose between Repentance or Kings, so you don't have Kings. However, these builds do take, instead of Kings, you take a Blessing of Light. Blessing of Light increases the amount that your flashes of light of all ranks will heal by 85 at level 50. It's nice and fresh, and since that's synergizing spectacularly with Fanaticism, and then your Sheath of Light, and then your Sacred Shield, and everything else you got going on, rather than Kings, you're going to be using Blessing of Light, not Blessing of Might, Blessing of Light. I'm being straight up serious. But the reason why this one can get away with less stamina is she actually doesn't have less stamina. It looks like she has a smaller health pool, and her Sacred Shields are not as powerful at 330, give or take. But secretly, she has way more stamina than you would think. Because from being bursted out, from a healing perspective, she basically starts her combat in Kings, and it's your it's your effective AFK pool that'll decide whether or not you got bursted out of existence from various classes, right? But once she starts healing herself, she wants to switch over to Blessing of Light. So she starts with Kings, and then she swaps over to Blessing of Light. So when you look at her standing HP, her AFK HP pool, you have from being bursted out of existence, you have to start it with the assumption that she has Blessing of Kings on her. How we do that is we don't take this number and increase it by 10% because that's not how classic World of Warcraft works. We take the actual stamina number down here and we increase that by 10%. So she's going to have an additional 280 HP from Blessing of Kings. So we have to take this 3,746. I'm just going to say 3,750 for the sake of my sanity. This is also a dwarf. That's why the Paladin, the HP is a bit higher. Has about 30 more HP to play with. That's one of the reasons why I love dwarf. And then we have to add 280 to that from Kings. So she'll be effectively running around with 4,000 HP. And you compare that to this other Paladin build over here, which had 4,150. And you can see that they're getting very close to each other in comparable blah, 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 blah. This Paladin's also designed to actually heal in combat. Does she actually have her runes? Which Paladin is this? What's going on here? No, you don't have your talents. What's going on here? Okay, yeah, I see you, but you're missing the stuffs. Yeah, there you go. What's going on here? Why are you missing the stuff? Yeah, okay. I was wondering why the mana was so low. I was like, what the hell? That's wrong. All right, cool. We need this. Right. So with Kings alone, she's already over 4,000 standing HP. And then she also took the Reckoning rune, right? Which means Reckoning, if you're AFK, the Reckoning rune is an additional 10% increase on your standing HP. But unlike Kings, it's actually a literal 10% HP increase. So we have to increase that by 10%. So she actually has more standing HP for the purposes of being bursted out of existence than even the other Paladin, the Ret Paladin does. Ret Paladin has 4,250 to 4,150, 4,250. This thing, because it has Hand of Reckoning, has closer to 4,400 HP to try to burst out of existence. It's not quite done yet because we have to add the 330 from Sacred Shield. And then, of course, we have to double add Sacred Shield because you're not killing... Unless I'm literally AFK, it's going to take you more than 6 seconds to burst this Paladin out of existence, which means you're probably going to get a double-dipping effect from Sacred Shield. So you can see this thing has 4,100 effective HP to try to burst out of existence. It gets worse because... I'll talk about that in a second. Hand of Reckoning is amazing with Sacred Shield and Spell Power, by the way. So one has Sheath of Light and Crusader Strike to play with. The other one has Hand of Reckoning and Enlightened Judgment instead. But we'll talk about that in a second. But what happens with Hand of Reckoning is you get to start operating in a sweet spot. This 20% damage reduction when you're below 35% life is a 25% effective increase in any kind of HP gains that are going on whatsoever. So Sacred Shield's effectiveness gets increased by 25%. Any hot effects you have on you get increased by 25%. 25%. Any additional healing you're doing to yourself gets increased by 25%. You have this is Holy Reckoning, so you effectively have more powerful heals. Even though you're less spell power, you actually have more powerful healing. But, they kind of even out a little bit. Healing Light is no joke. Blah, 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 blah. You don't have any... Oh, right. And then, of course, the trinket selection. Because we took this trinket and we took Major Recombobulator trinket, you better believe that those two things together with Hand of Reckoning are going absolutely nutter butters insane. So, for example, if we have this trinket active, and it's going to last 20 seconds, and that's basically for survival purposes, and this, I'll just try to put it in perspective here, right? So, if we weren't AFK with the Deep Ret Paladin, we clocked our HP at effective HP at around about 6,000, right? You have about a 6,000 HP, even more with like the Recombobulate Ray Trinket and this stupid thing. You just have tons of HP. I don't know what to tell you. You have so much HP to play with here. It's not even funny. These two trinkets together are worth an additional 1,000 healing. And on top of that, this is going to increase your Sheath of Light and all your hots and everything up even more. So at that point, you're probably looking at just an absolutely insanely hard to put down Paladin. This thing is even worse and harder to kill, even though it has less standing HP, because it has Blessing of Kings, it has, and then Reckoning is increasing all this stuff by 25%. The Recombobulator Ray is being increased by 25%, the Sheath of Light is being increased by 25%, the Flashes of Light are being increased by 25%, the Hots are being increased by 25%, even though you have less Hots. This thing is even harder to put down. Right? Harder to put down. Harder to burst out of existence when it's AFK, and then harder to put down over a period of time. Despite the fact that it actually has less plus healing in the grand scheme of things. And then as a Deep Ret Paladin, it gets even worse, because you took Enlightened Judgments over Sheath of Light. You're a Reckoning Paladin. You're not going to really be outside of Battlegrounds, you can't really support Sheath of Light on a Reckoning Paladin. If we're in Battlegrounds, then we definitely take Sheath of Light, and then we probably don't take Hand of Reckoning anymore, and instead you take Crusader Strike. So if you're going into Battlegrounds, you're probably taking this setup as a Reckoning Paladin. But if we're talking about like your BIS PvP setup in the grand scheme of things, like 1v1s, open world PvP, duels, all that stuff, this is 100% the way to go. You're taking Exorcism and you're taking Enlightened Judgments for all the reasons I talked about in the Deep Reckoning Paladin video. Two phrases are going to be ubiquitous when we're talking about Paladin and Season of Discovery. I start saying things like jab and the stiff arm jab, or the stiff jab, or just called stiff arming them. What the hell is the jab? Well, when you take Enlightened Judgments and you take Exorcism, and you also have, I do believe it's Purifying Power. Yeah, it reduces the cooldown of Exorcism by 50%. You don't have it at this level, but later you'll have improved improved Judgments. Exorcism is on a 7.5 second cooldown, and Judgment's on a 10-second/8 second cooldown. And when you have those, and can be used at a 40-yard range. This is a 30-yard range instant cast, and this is a 40-yard range instant cast. And effectively what that does is... One sec, let me pause the video. I suddenly got to blow my nose here. All right, we're back. I'll take a drink of water here. All right. Okay, cool. All right, so effectively what that does is in a roundabout way, it both heals you, damages the enemy, causes chip damage on the enemy, and it allows you to reduce the distance of enemy spell casts. I know that sounds weird, but let's just do a theoretical here, okay? So let's say a mage is trying to sheep you, and that sheep has a 30-yard range to it, okay? So he's out there trying to sheep you. He's like 25 yards away from you, trying to get a sheep off, which is the perfect distance for him to be away. You can't close the distance to him in time, and you can't really run away from him in time unless you literally backpedal at the last second. So when you're backpedaling, when you're actively moving as a paladin, you increase the range of all spells by 3 yards in Classic World of Warcraft due to leeway. When you're backpedaling, you're reducing the yardage by like 2 or 3 yards. I can't remember which one it is. So the only way to get away, to be able to run away from that sheep at like the 24-25 yard range mark is for you to literally backpedal at the very last second of that sheep cast. Otherwise, you won't be able to get away from it. However, if you have Enlightened Judgments and Exorcism, you can literally just bitch slap them while you're running away and increase that spell cast time by like a second. Which in the and you can cover 8 yards in a second. So it effectively reduces the effective yardage of any hardcast spell in the game by 8. And of course, if you double up on these bitch slaps, it'll reduce it by 1.5 seconds. The first bit of spell pushback is 1 second, and then the second bit is 1.5 seconds, and then it just halves itself into oblivion from there. So if you want to, you can reduce it by 12 yards. Basically, it makes it impossible for many classes to get hard cast spells off on you. If you're running away, if you're jabbing them, I call it the jab. So if you jab them, causing spell pushback, and then you're running away, I consider this to be stiff arm jabbing them. Right? You're using the jab to get distance. If instead you were using the jab to, in essence, heal yourself or to close the distance on them, right? Because again, you can think of it in terms of reducing the yardage. It's hard. So, for example, let's say there's a shaman trying to cast a lava burst on you. It's a 2-second spell cast. Well, if you jab him, it's going to be a 3-second spell cast. That jab is both worth some distance to run away. It's worth 8 yards closing, or it's worth 8 yards running away, whichever one you prefer. If they put down a grounding totem, congratulations. It doesn't matter because you enlighten judgment away the grounding totem, and then you jab them with exorcism, causing spell pushback. Versus mages, of course, the way it works is maybe they put up an HP bubble shield. And the way that works, of course, is you would exorcism them, which would basically, it wouldn't quite punch through the bubble shield, but then the Enlightened Judgments will do enough damage to punch through the bubble shield and cause spell pushback. So whether they like it or not, they're going to be suffering 1 second of spell pushback in either way. And of course, Judgment doesn't cause a GCD. So you can use them both simultaneously. You can judge damage and exorcism on them at the same time. It's absolutely beautiful. So and you can use that to either close with the target better or to run away from the target and interrupt their spell casting effectively. Super powerful, specifically for a Reckoning Paladin. Not as good for it's not bad for Deep Holy. And it's not as good for Deep Ret because Deep Ret has Repent, which changes the matchup considerably. And then Deep Holy Paladins have Holy Shock, so they're better off taking Sheath of Light. Deep Holy Paladins have Holy Shock and Exorcism. They already have kind of like a pseudo jab to play around with. Even though if they also take Enlightened Judgments, then they become like a super mega jabber. Which is really interesting. But Holy Shock jabbing is only 20-yard range, which means it's nowhere near as good as Enlightened Judgment's Exorcism jabbing. What else is there to say there? All right, so here's the other theoretical. It also counts as a heal. So let's say that enemy spellcaster over there does 1,000 DPS, okay? He's currently charging up a spell. He does 1,000 DPS on average, and you have the option as the Paladin to either bitch slap him with Exorcism or Enlightened Judgments, one of the two, because let's assume one's on cooldown, and to spell push back him for 1 second, to put yourself possibly in a GCD. One of these two will put you in a GCD, the other one will not, which is interesting if you think about it. But the sheer act of pushing back that enemy spell for 1 second is not only did you damage them, which is kind of important for the purposes of threatening to kill them, but you also, in essence, healed yourself for like 1,000 HP, right? Because they're doing on average 1,000 DPS. So even if it came at the expense of you flash of lighting yourself because you're now on a GCD, it's still usually worth it. And more importantly, it let you get distance. So it lets you close with the target or it lets you run away from the target, which is very tactically significant. And in the grand scheme of things, will also cause you to save even more HP, if that makes any sense. So it double dips on the HP save. It causes their spell to take 1 second longer to cast. And even though you didn't get to Flash of Light yourself because you're currently on a GCD, it is going to allow you to get an extra 8 yards closer or an extra 8 yards away from the enemy, which will probably be, which is even a more of a DPS loss for the enemy and might let you get that Flash of Light off later. So the jab is absolutely amazing in Season of Discovery. In fact, it's borderline broken. Jab, 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 stiff arm jab, close distance jab, runaway jab, 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 jab. Absolutely amazing. So the reason why jabbing is so good on a Reckoning Paladin is because you have Reckoning. Okay? And why that's so terrifying is, like, again, let's talk sheep, right? So that mage is trying to sheep you over there. Okay, cool. The jab can allow you to cover the distance to that mage, even at 30 yards. No, actually, it won't cover at 30 yards. It's literally 28 yards. So at the 28-yard range or the 27-yard range, somewhere around there, if a mage is trying to sheep you, you can actually run towards him, bitch slap him with the jab, make it take 2.5 seconds to cast that sheep, and you will get a melee attack off on him before he gets the chance to get that sheep off, which is terrifying. And of course, if you're a Reckoning Paladin, that basically means death. Now, if you're a Deep Ret Paladin, they might, they don't care, right? Basically, they eat a Crusader Strike, they eat a auto attack, and then they got you in a sheep, and they're basically free to, like, run away and eat and drink and all that stuff. And of course, the counterplay as a Deep Ret Paladin is you let them run away a little bit, and then you PvP trinket. You let them run away for 6 seconds, and then you PvP trinket the sheep away, and you start jabbing them again, right? You start bitch slapping them again. Because you let Exorcism come off a cooldown. You let your Judgment come off a cooldown, and you really don't care. Deep Holy Paladin, you bubble, you just chip damage away the mage, and they absolutely hate it. But as a Reckoning Paladin, you're so deadly that they can't really get the spellcast off because you just touch them and they die. Like that's why it's so scary. But the Deep Holy Paladin, it's like they run up, they Crusader Strike, or they Divine Storm them, they hit them once, and then they get turned into a sheep. The other Paladins, they hit them once, and then they get turned into a sheep. It's not super, super good, and for those reasons, they tend to take Sheath of Light instead, right? The Deep Holy Paladin prefers to have Sheath of Light. The Deep Ret Paladin prefers to have Sheath of Light. Again, they have, because again, they've got one Paladin has Holy Shock to play with, so they don't have a stiff arm, they don't have a stiff arm jab, right? Because you can't use Holy Shock at the 30-yard range. To punch through the whatever's going on and jab them very well. You don't have a long range jab, but you have a closing jab, right? So if you're running at that mage, yeah, you Exorcism, and then you the Holy Shock will punch through the bubble and will cause the spell pushback. So you have a closing jab as a Deep Holy Paladin, but you don't have a running away jab as a Deep Holy Paladin. But more importantly, you have so Sheath of Light becomes the viable thing because Lasting Judgment's not going to do anything for you. So you'd close with them, give them the jab, bitch slap them once. You'd probably, well, you don't, you might take Fanaticism. Well, you wouldn't take Seal of Martyrdom. You would actually take Divine Storm. And then once you hit them, you would Divine Storm on them. You might Crusader Strike them. I have no idea if you want to take Crusader Strike over Hand of Reckoning. But you would Divine Storm on them, and then you get turned into a sheep. But you'd have Sheath of Light active, so when you finally get out of sheep, your Exorcisms are going to be scarier, your Holy Shocks are going to be scarier, your Healings are going to be more powerful, your Sacred Shield's going to be more powerful, you still have Hand of Reckoning, you're kind of a monster, right? The jabs, Enlightened Judgment's not really doing all that much for you. It's the same for Deep Ret Paladin, except Deep Ret Paladin probably takes Crusader Strike instead because you're already tanky as hell. You might as well just get some more damage out of it. You get the idea. But the Reckoning Paladin doesn't need the additional damage from Crusader Strike, so he just takes Hand of Reckoning, unless specifically they're in BGs. They love the jab. The jab is super deadly on them, so they take that unless they're in BGs. If you're in a battleground, you want to take a Sheath of Light anyways. You might even take Divine Storm and use Seal of Justice as opposed to Seal of Martyrdom. So yeah, so that's basically what we're seeing here. Light's Grace is actually really, 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 really good. The problem here is that if we didn't have the jab, Light's Grace is amazing. If we didn't have Sacred Shield, Light's Grace is amazing. But because you have Sacred Shield, the next thing you know, you want Fanaticism to help get the HOTS rolling. If you have Sheath of Light and Sacred Shield, then you really want Fanaticism to get the HOTS rolling. Light's Grace just isn't all that good. And there's nothing else here that is even remotely decent. The problem with taking Light's Grace on the Deep Holy Paladin is I'm going to make a Deep Holy guide for Paladin tomorrow. There's a ton of stuff to say about it. She is either going to take Art of War or she's going to take a Sacred Shield. There's no real way around it. But I'm going to tell you right now, a Deep Holy Paladin is going to take Sacred Shield over Art of War, 110,000%. She's going to take Fanaticism over anything else, 110,000%. She probably won't take Hand of Reckoning. That's really debatable. Really hard to say. She'll probably end up taking Crusader Strike. She'll probably end up taking Divine Storm. And this will probably be what she looks like. The problem Deep Holy has is that she desperately needs damage. All right? She needs damage, but she also needs survivability. She's the one Paladin in the game that is going to live and breathe time on target Paladin. And as the inventor and player of time on target Paladin, I'm going to tell you right now that healing is more important than anything else. Healing while damaging your enemy is more important than any other stat while doing time on target Paladin, to the point where I'm not even sure you'll end up taking Crusader Strike. You might just end up taking Hand of Reckoning. Why is this? Because the only way to you win combat by sitting on people and not dying and just beating them to death over time. So you end up being a Paladin that's low on the DPS, but is high on it's low on the damage of DPS, but it's high on the seconds of DPS. So a Reckoning Paladin might DPS on their target for 5 seconds before they explode. A Deep Ret Paladin might DPS on the target for 15-20 seconds. An actual time on target Paladin is looking to DPS on the target for between 30 to 40 seconds. And there's only 2 ways to get off a time on target Paladin physically off of them, right? Enemies to get you physically off of them. The first one is for them to CC you and run away. The second one is for them to do enough damage to you that you're forced to stop and heal yourself, and then that's how they get away from you. What this almost always means for time on target Paladin is that healing while in combat is more valuable to your DPS than anything else, because if you have to stop and heal yourself, you are absolutely screwing over your DPS. You might as well kiss your DPS goodbye, because you had to spend 2.5 seconds to Holy Light yourself, and then you have to spend God knows how long to catch back up with the enemy target in melee. At best, you get to Hodge stun them and then double Holy Light yourself, and then to keep DPSing on them. But even while you were Holy Lighting yourself, you weren't DPSing on them, which is a big problem, because they usually have abilities that are going to come off of cooldown within 30 seconds, and you'd prefer just to be DPSing on them the whole entire time. Time on target Paladin almost always, traditionally, they use things like Edward the Odd, and they make themselves super, super tanky, like lots of spell power gear and holy plus healing gear. Fire resistance comes to mind, so they're wearing full tier 2 with a Hand of Rags, so they have 200 fire resist. It means that grenades and goblin mortars have a 55% chance. The stun has a 55% chance to be resisted. Lord knows they don't take almost no fire damage from that stuff. But it's the fact that you resisted a grenade and can still sit on the enemy and time on target them is absolutely amazing. It also means that you can grenade them and then use those 3 seconds to put a Holy Light into yourself, and you're still physically on top of them. It's all about being physically on top of them and being unkillable. And at the end of the day, Sacred Shield is going to do that for you way, 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 way more than Art of War is going to do anything for you. I know that it's I'm going to want to take, you might have it in your brain that it's oh, I'm going to take Seal of Martyrdom for the ×2 Art of War proc. I'm going to take Art of War, I'm going to take Exorcism, and I'm going to be like some kind of preg paladin in Season of Discovery. I'm going to use a super fast one-hander, and I'm going to heal myself with Holy Shocks. I don't know if that's going to be viable. What I do know is that in the current gearing that Blizzard is offering us, that's not going to be viable at level 50. It's only when you start getting access to Avengers and hybrid gear, like the actual really good Paladin, well-optimized Paladin PvP gear, the gear that's got strength, stamina, agility, critical strike chance, spell power. That's the gear that the Preg Paladin is going to want, because at that point you're going to have like a 20% critical strike chance, and then finally you can actually support Art of War. But even if you're using a 1.3 second speed one-handed weapon, and you're using Art of War, and you're using Seal of Martyrdom, and your master plan is that I'm going to like refresh Holy Shock all over the place, even then, Sacred Shield might be better. And you're not really going to want to hear that, but it's probably true. But it also might not be true. So I really need to do the math on that one. Sacred Shield is just worth its weight in gold. But one of these two is going to be better. It's either going to be Art of War is going to be the way to go, or it's going to be Sacred Shield. That's going to be the way to go. The problem, of course, with Seal of Martyrdom is that you already have Seal of Righteousness, which goes Super Saiyan with all the spell power. You're only taking Seal of Martyrdom so that she times 2 procs Art of War, and you're denying yourself Divine Storm, and you didn't take you may or may not have Hand of Reckoning. I don't know. Like, I'll just have to do the math. I'll have to keep my I'll just have to do my due diligence and do the math and try to figure out which one would actually be better in the grand scheme of things. Sacred Shield, Holy Shock, Preg Paladin, or are you going Divine Storm, Sacred Shield, Hand of Reckoning as a Deep Holy Paladin? Or are you so tanky, even without it, that you can afford Crusader Strike? At level 50, this is probably your build right here. Crusader Strike, Divine Storm, Sacred Shield, Sheath of Light. If for whatever reason you're still finding it that you need to do it, you would take Hand of Reckoning. I would advise taking Hand of Reckoning personally until you just prove to yourself that you need to take you need the increased DPS for whatever reason, and yes, you're going to be using a two-handed weapon. Okay, so that's basically what I'm seeing right now. Is Holy Shock does have the jab, but only in closing. She doesn't have the current gear to really support Art of War, which means you're definitely going to be taking Sacred Shield. You may or may not be taking Hand of Reckoning. I would definitely err on the Hand of Reckoning side of things. You're going to be wearing the exact same gear as the Reckoning Paladin, just because it's going to give you the most of everything. I don't even want to know what your spell power is in this gear, because this thing actually did take Sheath of Light, whereas the Reckoning Paladin did not. You're not going to be taking the spell power gear because, again, you don't have Art of War. Just trust me on this and take the plus healing gear instead. Sheath of Light, it's again, you're a time on target paladin. You do not worship at the altar of increasing your damage. You worship at the altar of increasing your seconds of DPS on the target. And plus healing gear and Sheath of Light is going to do way more for you in that realm than spell power gear ever will. The only time that you'd even consider taking bonus spell power gear is if you just didn't have enough damage. But at that point, you probably are better off taking Crusader Strike. I could be wrong about this, right? So it might be that you take the spell power gear, but then you definitely take Hand of Reckoning because your healing is weaker. Or you take the plus healing gear, but now suddenly you don't need Hand of Reckoning, so you can support Crusader Strike instead. One of those two is going to be BIS. So if you did decide to take plus spell power gear over plus healing gear, then you're definitely going to want to take Crusader Reckoning over Crusader Strike. If you decide to take the plus healing gear, which is what I'm suggesting, then you're 100% going to want to take, you might be able to take Crusader Strike. However, it synergizes so spectacularly with Hand of Reckoning that it's not even funny. Drink of water. I'm trying to get what Sacred Shield is doing for this stupid thing here. Lol. Let's just look at it real fast here. So this thing I still think has, yeah, you have 430 attack power on this gear over here, which is still kind of funny because the other Paladin only has like 500 attack power. This is just a thing about Paladin in Classic World of Warcraft. You do 80% of your damage butt naked with a two-handed weapon. You have 80% of your attack power butt naked with a two-handed weapon. Welcome to the oddities of Classic World of Warcraft. Other weird things here with the plus healing stuff is you're actually, don't be afraid to use some cloth gear with plus healing on it. It's 100% worth it. If you can get your hands on the male plus healing gear, that is preferable, but Blizzard almost always denies that to Alliance because they think it is like, you know, shaman only gear, so it just never drops in raids or you can't buy it from a vendor, which sucks. But the next best thing, of course, is leather gear plus healing gear. So we do have a plus healing belt. And we do have plus healing wrist guards here. It is what it is. Welcome to Classic. All right, so we have 430 times 0.3 because we do have Sheath of Light. So that increases plus healing by about 130. So we're going to go 130 equals, what the fuck off, 130, and then our base healing, well, in this gear was like 200. So we actually have 330 plus healing here. We're going to multiply that by a 43% chance. That's about 142. And then it was like 243 was base. So yeah, your Sacred Shield in this gear is worth 385 bubble shield. Divide that by 6. It's like 64 HPS. That is a terrifying amount of HPS. What's worse is that you have the even more powerful flashes of light. That's even more spell power for Flash of Light. You have Sheath of Light. This is monstrous. This is the stuff of nightmares. I can do the Flash of Light heals if you want. I think the base healing is like 283. You're going to be using Blessing of Light because you don't have Kings in the Holy Shock build, I don't think. You don't have Kings. Blessing of Light will add 85 to that. Bada bing, bada boom. So that's how much that is. Let's get the other one so we can get the spell power. We were at 330 spell power, if I recall correctly. 330. Yeah, 330 spell power. Let's be a dick and add the extra 200 spell power from the PvP trinket. Lol. Because all we really care about is the plus healing off of the PvP trinket, because that'll give us like 20 seconds of time on target off of that alone, which is absolutely terrifying. I have to take 43% of this because that's the spell power ratio of Flash of Light. Okay, cool. So now I have to add 200 and actually clear. I actually have to take this 368 or whatever the hell it was and multiply it by 12%. Because again, you have the 12% stronger Flash of Light heals. Okay, cool. So it's like, 412. And now I have to add this to it. By the way, this 0.3 43 spell power ratio actually factors in healing light. So you wouldn't take this and increase it by 12%. The base healing of Flash of Light, I think, is like it's like 39%. And then you take these 3 talent points and it pumps it up to 43%. So literally, we're just going to add 2 to 7 to this. Okay, so our base Flash of Light healing is almost 640. Like, what the balls? All right, well, that's crazy. It's going to have something stupid like an 85% chance to crit when this insane bubble shield is active. 350. What is our bubble shield now? 330 plus 200 because we've got the trinket active times 0.43 equals plus 242 equals. Yeah, so it's like 470. So while this trinket is active, our Sacred Shield is now 470 fucking hit points. Holy balls. Our flashes of light are like 640. Like, what? If we have Hand of Reckoning, this gets even crazier. Okay, so what if this thing crits? Well, first off, I'm going to tell. Well, let's calculate the hot. The hot would be multiply this by 2.4 because we have Sheath of Light. Cool. So the hot divided by 12 seconds is worth 128 HPS. What the hell? You think Art of War is going to... Art of War, I don't know. Maybe Art of War is better, but not at level 50. So this is our bubble shield every 6 seconds. So I divide that by 6 seconds to get HPS. Our hots are rolling at this HPS. Our flashes of light are 85% chance to heal us for something ridiculous, like over 1,000 hit points. It heals as much as a holy light, like Jesus. If you took Hand of Reckoning, then we have to multiply all this by 25%. Okay, cool. So we almost have 100 HPS in Sacred Shield alone. Then we got to multiply this. The hot is even more powerful. Add 97 to that. Or actually, that's 98, isn't it? Jesus. Okay, cool. So this Paladin build is on top of you, beating you, and for the next 20 seconds, while this trinket is still active, and these hots are rolling, it effectively almost has 260 HPS, and that's not including the fact that the damn Holy Light healed, the damn Flash of Light healed us for like 1,000 hit points. Like, what? So I gotta divide that by like 12 seconds for like more hot. It's just nuts. All right, it's literally just nuts. So this is the bread and butter of time on target Paladin. Is you just sit on people and you do an insane amount of healing. Traditionally, we would be wielding Edward the Odd. You're not going to get Edward the Odd until Edward the Odd. You're not going to get Edward the Odd until level 52, I do believe. Maybe she's level 57. So you won't get Edward the Odd yet. But traditionally, you'll be wielding Edward the Odd, and that's primarily where you're getting your heals from. Edward the Odd's effective HPS is something stupid. It's like 200. No, she's not 200. She's like 100 to like 100. No, she's 140 HPS. Okay, I remember my math. Wielding Edward the Odd as a Deep Holy Paladin is worth about 140 HPS. And back on Era, you'd basically be time on targeting people to death off of that alone. Sheath of Light is just insane. This thing is absolutely insane. And of course, you still have Holy Shock kicking around every now and then, like Jesus. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I considered doing something like this for a Deep Ret Paladin, like a Ret Reckoning Paladin. But the jab was just too good, right? The jab and all the tactical benefits of the jab. Like if I was a Deep Ret Paladin and I had this setup, I'd be happy with it. It's by far the best defensive setup that you can possibly have as a Paladin. But tactically speaking, once you get Reckoning, because when you touch people, they die, you just want the jab. And that's literally the only thing that changes between a Deep Holy Paladin and a Reckoning Paladin. Except Deep Holy Paladin already has the jab on the close. They don't have the jab on... They don't have a stiff arm jab, but they do have a closing jab. And the next thing you know, you just want Sheath of Light, because you're going to be time on targeting people to death. Absolutely monstrous. Monstrous. Okay, so anyways, this video is probably long enough. That's what I'm seeing here in the gearing so far. Again, this gearing is slightly different. So in the other Paladin gear, you wanted to switch out helmet and legs, and I think it was gloves. No. It was shoulders, right? But this is the complete opposite. Instead, you want to wear the boots, you want to wear the gloves, and you want to wear the chest piece. So it might be the fact that they're kind of wearing the same gear here. Okay, so here's the actual spell power gear. Yeah, so you can see that it might be the same. Sergeant's gloves, plate gloves, plate boots, plate boots. Plate pauldrons, and then plate... No, you don't have plate pauldrons over here. Interesting. Yeah. So anyway, so slight differences in the gearing, but you are double dipping on the 3-set bonus to get as much HP as possible. This looks low, but remember you have kings. You have Reckoning, so it's absolutely monstrous. Blah, 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 blah. And yeah, major recombobulate array. If these trinkets are on cooldown, you end up switching them to other trinkets. What is there else to say here? Yeah, you end up swapping them out to other trinkets. Believe it or not, Uther's Strength is absolutely amazing. The other one that's absolutely amazing is, if those trinkets are on cooldown, is Mark of the Chosen. Absolutely amazing if they give you Mark of the Chosen. These are just passive trinkets you use if everything else is basically on cooldown. I know Uther's Strength says it sucks, but it's actually amazing. What this Paladin is doing, this is the Reckoning build. This Paladin is actually, if it's not jabbing you, it's spending a lot of time healing itself until it has a full Wreck Bomb, and then it goes on the offense. If you notice, we're not using Goblin Mortar. We're not using PvP Trinket. We are not using, what else is there? Gnomish Netomatic, even though those are perfectly viable to use in this build. The reason is because it's not bad to use those. But in a super bursty meta that it is, just being able to heal yourself for 1,000 hit points on demand and going Super Saiyan in the durability for 20 seconds is far more valuable than being able to trinket out of a stun or anything else like that. You still have bubble. How that Paladin, the Reckoning Paladin and the Holy Paladin are designed to catch people is basically you throw the grenade at somebody and then you start making your way over towards them. If they PvP, if they don't trinket the nade, then you just go over there and kill them with your Wreck Bomb. You basically heal yourself for 1,000,000 years till you have a full Wreck Bomb. Then you grenade them and you start making your way over towards them. Or you can open with the grenade and then just try to sit on top of them and do damage. You're going to watch the enemy PvP trinket the grenade. You don't have anything else to catch them. You don't have Gnomish Netomatic. You don't have Goblin Mortar. You don't have any of that. But instead you have those other trinkets, which are making you super, super unkillable. And what you basically do is you just heal yourself and you start jabbing the guy and running around and you just wait out the minute-long timer until your grenade's off cooldown. And then now you have a full Wreck Bomb and they've been suffering chip damage or whatever from you jabbing them. And then you just grenade them and you go and you kill them. So that's how the Reckoning Paladin operates. The Holy Paladin wants to time on target use. So they end up using pretty much the exact same trinket setup. If they're forced to heal, they don't mind at all. So they just end up using those super defensive trinkets and they heal themselves. Worst case scenario, they're actually using Gnomish Netomatic and Goblin Mortar and stuff like that to beat to catch and beat the tar out of people. And then Ret Paladin also doesn't really care. They might. It's just weird. So the trinkets are kind of seasoned to taste, but I just wanted to look at it from a purely survivability perspective. You're 100%. These are your best survival trinkets right here. Because with all the spell power that you have, it's going to cause the Major Recombobulate Array to heal you for 1,000 hit points. And of course, if you had Reckoning, those 1,000 hit points are going to be when you were like 5% life, and all of a sudden you shoot up to like 40% life. The enemy and it just increased. It's not 1,000 HP heal. It's like a 1,250 HP heal. Absolutely nuts. And of course, this trinket just gives you insane survivability. But that's if you have heal in combat. Notice all Paladin specs have healing in combat right now. This one actually did take 5 out of 5 spiritual focus, so they can heal if they have to. Deep Holy, of course, can heal if it has to. Ugh. And this Paladin here, of course, their talent. Well, man, that reset the talents. They end up putting a bunch of points into the Holy Tree. It's literally Holy Reckoning. So all Paladin builds have the ability to heal in combat, and it just makes those trinkets bis. If you're struggling to catch people and kill people for whatever reason, but basically what I'm trying to say here is if we find that we have overcompensated on the survivability with Major Recombobulate Array and this, what it's essentially a Zandalar Hero's Charm trinket, if we find that we're just our durability is excessive and we're struggling to catch people, then you're just going to swap out those trinkets for the classic, Gnomish Denomatic and Goblin Mortar. 100% without question. Odds are you'll swap out one of them, but you won't swap out both of them. So you'll probably end up keeping the Major Recombobulator Raid Trinket, especially if you have Hand of Reckoning, just because it's HP on demand. Or you'll end up keeping out the Zandalar Hero Charm Trinket because it's causing Sacred Shield to go Super Saiyan. It's causing your Hots to go Super Saiyan. It's causing your Flashes of Light to be better. It's causing everything to be better, right? So one of those two trinkets is going to be your primary defensive trinket. And then you might have Gnomish Denomatic and Goblin Mortar. That will be your secondary trinket. Ideally, we'll have both. We can afford both Gnomish Denomatic and Goblin Mortar. But it just might not be necessary. What else is there to talk about? Yada, 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 yada. What am I trying to say here? Oh, and then what'll probably happen is that they're just on rotation. So you'll have the Zandalar Hero Charm and the Gnomish Denomatic. And then when those are on cooldown, you have the Recombobulator Ray and Goblin Mortar. And then when those are on cooldown, the other ones are probably off of cooldown, and you're just switching back and forth. And then worst case scenario, you're running around with like, Uther's Strength and Mark of the Chosen or some other kind of defensive trinket. Nifty Stopwatch comes to mind. It is a decent defensive trinket, believe it or not. The defensive trinket. Tidal Charm also comes to mind. Both Goblin Mortar, Gnomish Denomatic, Tidal Charm, and Nifty Stopwatch. These four trinkets are our bread and butter Paladin trinkets historically, and they can be used both offensively and defensively. So if you're getting bursted on and you desperately need to heal yourself, you Tidal Charm them and you put a Holy Light into yourself. You Goblin Mortar them and you put a Holy Light into yourself. Or or if you're like, if you've been counterspelled and the mage is about to kill you, you Goblin Mortar stun them and you keep running away for 3 seconds, and it buys you enough time that when the counterspell wears off, you can Holy Light yourself. Hopefully you get the idea here. Gnomish Denomatic is the same thing. If the mage is blinked recently, you just Gnomish Denomatic them, and then you just keep running. It just is what it is. But the jab is so oppressive that these trinkets kind of lose value from a defensive perspective, and the jab is so oppressive on the offense that these trinkets also lose kind of their value in the offensive scheme of things. Because before in Era, the way it would work is like, I grenade the enemy, I get on top of them, I bitch slap them, they grenade me, and they reset the distance, and then I'm stuck chasing them for 1,000,000 years, right? Until I can catch them again. But that's just not going to happen. So in Era, the way it would work is if you weren't up a catching tool on your enemy, you'd find yourself in this scenario where they're running away for 12 seconds at a 30-yard range, and you're trying to chase them for 20 seconds at a 30-yard range, and they're just waiting for cooldowns, and you're waiting for cooldowns, and it sucks. You can't DPS them at these distances. Think Mage. They would sheep you, do a burst on you, and if that burst failed to kill you, they run away for like 20 seconds. Until their blinks and stuff are on cooldown, they get enough distance and they sheep you and they do it over again. And during that time period, there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it unless you have Goblin Mortar, Gnomish Denomatic, Tidal Charm, Nifty Stopwatch, something like to punish them. Same thing with Hunter, right? They're trapping you, they're trying to kill you, and then they're running away for 1,000,000 years until their cooldowns come back up again and they do it all over again, right? But when you have the jab, during this time period of I want to run away from the Paladin, even shamans would do this, right? They would burst on you, they would fail to kill you, and then they're just running away in a straight line until their cooldowns come up again, until they can grenade stun you again, yada yada yada, right? But if you have the jab, while they're running away from you, you're just pelting them the entire time. You're putting exorcisms into them every 7.5 seconds. You're judging them basically every 8 seconds. They cannot survive this constant jabbing over and over and over again. You're doing so much chip damage to them that you really don't care that you're not physically on top of them trying to murder them. That's going to be the case for a Deep Holy Paladin. That's going to be the case for a Retribution Paladin. Even though the Retribution Paladin doesn't have jab, they have a +1 catch tool, which means they're doing a hell of a lot more sitting on top of the enemy, beating the crap out of them. So, for example, if you're a Holy Paladin and the enemy is running away from you in a straight line, you really don't care because you just keep exorcising in them and holy shocking them, and it's like, okay, whatever. Like, maybe I'll need a Gnomish Automatic, maybe I'll need a Goblin Mortar because I'd prefer to be sitting on them in melee. But in the grand scheme of things, you really don't care. Because at some point they're going to have to turn and try to cast a spell on you or something, and at that point you just, jab your way over to them, cover the distance, bitch slap them a bit, is what it is. Alright, so I'm going to end the video here, and Deus Vult boys, the gearing looks interesting. It's still not super well optimized. The ideal Paladin gearing in Season of Discovery is literally Tier 1. I've said it before, I'll say it again. So that would be Strength, Stamina, Intellect, and then plus Healing gear. Currently, we don't have Strength, Stamina, plus Healing gear. Instead, we have Stamina, Intellect, plus Healing gear. This is BIS PvP gear for Reckoning Paladin specifically. And then Deep Ret Paladin and Deep Holy Paladin, because they're taking Sheath of Light, would prefer to have Strength on their gear as opposed to extra stats. Because they don't have the jab quite the same way as the Reckoning Paladin has the jab. Alright, anyways, end the video here, and Deus Vult.